I want you to imagine, just for a second, a true miracle material.
Oh, yeah, the kind of stuff that material scientists and sci-fi writers have been dreaming about for decades, right?
Exactly. Like it is stronger than steel, it is lighter than paper, it conducts electricity better than copper.
It sounds completely perfect.
Right, and it is poised to completely revolutionize everything. I mean, from the battery inside your phone to the massive energy grids powering your city.
A pristine, futuristic solution to our tech bottlenecks.
Yeah, but what if I told you that to actually get this utopian supermaterial, we are currently ripping open the earth, drenching the raw materials in vats of highly toxic acid, and emitting absolutely staggering amounts of carbon into the atmosphere?
It definitely shatters that sleek, futuristic illusion, I'll tell you that.
It really does.
We tend to view nanotechnology through this lens of clean, sterile laboratories, but the backstage reality for this specific material is rooted in a highly destructive, deeply antiquated industrial model.
Yeah.
Honestly, it might be the biggest dirty secret in the clean tech world right now.
And that is exactly the tension we are diving into today. Because we are looking at a fascinating, highly detailed 10-year projection analysis.
Right, spanning from 2026 to 2036.
Yep, and it's centered around a massively disruptive new technology. The source material we have in front of us outlines a roadmap for the gradual replacement of 10,000 metric tons of traditional 2D graphene.
Which is that miracle material we just mentioned.
Right, the dirty one.
Yeah.
And replacing it with a groundbreaking invention.
Yeah.
And the twist here is just incredible. I mean, this new alternative, this 3D biogenic graphene, is made entirely from coffee.
I know on the surface it sounds almost absurd to link cutting-edge nanotechnology with your morning beverage.
It sounds like a joke.
Right, but the science behind this is highly rigorous. We are looking specifically at the work of Costa Rican scientist Martin Gutierrez Guerrero and his company Nova Amazonia.
Right.
What his team has done is figure out how to take agricultural waste, specifically the discarded woody branches from pruned coffee trees, and transform it into an advanced 3D carbon nanostructure.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the contrast here is pretty extreme, and I want to make sure we understand the baseline before we get to the coffee branches.
Sure, that makes sense.
Let's start by dismantling this green halo that traditional graphene has enjoyed for so long.
Oh, it definitely has one.
Yeah, when most of us hear graphene, we immediately think of next-generation solar panels or hyper-efficient electric vehicles.
Yeah.
We just assume it's good for the planet.
And that assumption is exactly where the industry gets a free pass.
Right.
When you actually look at the life cycle analysis of traditional 2D graphene, the numbers are grim, very grim.
How grim are we talking?
Well, emitting just one single ton of graphene via traditional industrial methods generates approximately 60 metric tons of CO2 equivalent.
Wait, let me just pause on that. 60 tons of carbon emitted into the atmosphere just to make one ton of material.
Exactly.
That is a 60-to-1 ratio of pollution to product. That is insane.
It is a massive, massive footprint. And to understand why, we really have to look at the chemistry involved. To hit that 10,000 metric ton projection quota over the next decade, using the traditional method the global industry requires, about 350,000 tons of highly aggressive chemicals.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we're talking about utilizing concentrated sulfuric acid, potassium permanganate, hydrazine, and heavy organic solvents.
Okay, to put that in perspective, 350,000 tons of acid is like filling several massive oil tankers with pure corrosive liquid just to make a fraction of that weight in graphene.
Right. It's a monumental scale of toxic material.
But here is what I'm struggling to conceptualize. I mean, why do you need an ocean of boiling acid to make a tiny sheet of carbon? Like, how does that mechanism actually work?
It comes down to how traditional graphene is sourced in the first place. In the standard model, you start by mining natural graphite out of the earth.
Okay, so traditional mining.
Right. And you can picture graphite structurally like a massive deck of playing cards where every card is a single layer of carbon, but they're all tightly compressed and bonded together.
I can picture that, yeah.
Well, to get graphene, you need just one of those cards, just one single layer.
Right.
So the industry uses a process called chemical exfoliation. They essentially use those horrific acids to forcefully wedge themselves between the layers of carbon and aggressively pry them apart.
Wow.
It is highly violent chemistry.
So producing traditional graphene sounds less like green tech and more like trying to peel a microscopic onion using a sledgehammer and a vat of boiling acid.
That is honestly a very accurate analogy.
So if traditional mining is like trying to pry apart a deck of superglued cards with a vat of sulfuric acid, How does a discarded coffee branch actually replace that?
Well, they don't pry it apart.
Wait,
Well,
so are we extracting some kind of natural acid from the plant to do the same violent separation?
not at all. They are entirely redesigning the starting line. They don't pry anything apart because they aren't starting with compressed mined graphite.
Oh, okay.
Nova Amazonia uses the wood from the annual pruning of coffee trees. While that tree was growing on the farm, it was naturally pulling carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere to build its cellular structure.
So it's literally a natural carbon sink.
Exactly. The genius of Gutierrez Guerrero's method is that they recognize plant tissue already possesses a highly organized three-dimensional carbon scaffold built by nature.
Oh, I see. They aren't trying to isolate a single 2D sheet.
No, not at all.
They are just taking the 3D structure that the plant already grew itself.
Precisely. They use botanical precursors extracted directly from the coffee biomass to synthesize the graphene in 3 dimensions.
That is wild.
Yeah, by utilizing that natural architecture rather than starting with a compressed rock of graphite, they bypass the need for exfoliation entirely.
So no acid.
That is how they eliminate the need for those 350,000 tons of toxic acids. It is a 100% reduction in those harsh chemical precursors.
A complete elimination. That's incredible.
And because the source material is a plant that sequestered carbon during its lifespan, the entire process achieves net negative emissions.
Wow.
Over the 10 years of this projection, the biogenic method avoids 600,000 metric tons of CO2 from entering the atmosphere.
That fundamentally flips the script on how we manufacture advanced materials.
It really does.
But when you drench a material in hundreds of thousands of tons of sulfuric acid in the traditional method, you create a massive secondary problem, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Because you can't just take an acid-soaked sheet of carbon and drop it into a consumer smartphone battery. You have to neutralize it.
Yes.
And that brings us to the hidden utility bill of nanotech, which is the water and energy drain.
That secondary problem is immense. The traditional chemical approach we just described is known in the industry as the Hummers method.
Okay, the Hummers method.
Right. And because the carbon has been completely saturated in sulfuric acid and potassium permanganate, it requires intensive, repeated washing to purify the graphene so it's actually usable.
You essentially have to rinse off the microscopic acid bath.
Exactly.
What does that cost in terms of water?
It consumes an average of 100 cubic meters of ultra-pure water per ton of graphene.
100 cubic meters per ton.
Yeah, so to conceptualize that, over the 10-year, 10,000-ton projection, you are looking at an astronomical volume of water.
I can't even imagine.
You take pristine, highly purified drinking water, use it to wash away toxic industrial sludge, and turn it into heavily contaminated wastewater that then has to be treated or stored.
That is just bleeding resources.
Yeah.
I mean, how does the coffee branch method avoid that? Do they still have to wash it?
No, they employ what the analysis calls green synthesis in a closed-loop system.
Okay.
Because they never use the harsh acids to begin with, there is no toxic sludge to wash away.
Makes sense.
The projection shows that by sidestepping the Hummers method, the biogenic alternative saves 1 million cubic meters of clean water over 10 years.
1 million cubic meters. For anyone trying to visualize that, that is roughly the equivalent of a small town's entire annual water consumption.
Just gone. I mean, saved.
Just saved simply because we stopped trying to brute force graphite apart with chemicals.
And the savings extend directly to the energy grid as well.
Oh, right, the energy.
Because chemical exfoliation isn't the only traditional way to make graphene. There's another method heavily used in the industry called chemical vapor deposition, or CVD.
Right, CVD.
Instead of prying graphite apart, CVD builds graphene from the bottom up. They take carbon-rich gases and deposit them onto a surface to grow the graphene layers.
I mean, that sounds a bit more elegant than the acid bath. What is the catch there?
The catch is the sheer thermal energy required to make that gas break down and bond. To make a CVD reactor work, you have to run it at extreme temperatures.
How extreme?
Between 900 and 1,000 degrees Celsius, often for extended continuous periods.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I mean, we are essentially running thousands of miniature volcanoes at 1,000 degrees just to make microscopic sheets of carbon.
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
The energy bill on that have to be staggering.
It demands about 80 megawatt hours per ton. It is an incredibly energy-dense, highly inefficient process.
Wow.
The biogenic alternative, however, uses a completely different thermal mechanism called controlled pyrolysis.
Break down pyrolysis for us. Like, how is baking coffee wood different from running a CVD reactor?
Pyrolysis is the process of heating organic material, in this case, the pre-treated coffee wood, in an environment entirely devoid of oxygen.
Okay, no oxygen.
Right. And because there is no oxygen present, the wood cannot catch fire and burn into ash. Instead, it undergoes thermal decomposition.
So it doesn't burn, it just breaks down.
Exactly. The heat essentially strips away all the non-carbon elements like oxygen and hydrogen, leaving behind a highly structured, pure carbon framework.
So you're just cooking off everything that isn't carbon, leaving the 3D scaffold perfectly intact.
Yes, and because Nova Amazonia has optimized this specifically for their botanical precursors, they significantly reduce what is known as the thermal residence time.
Meaning how long it stays in the oven.
Right, the material simply does not need to stay in the reactor for nearly as long as a traditional CVD process. It is a vastly more controlled, much faster thermal bake.
So lower temperatures and less time in the oven. What does that translate to in terms of power saved?
It cuts the energy required to less than a fifth of the traditional CVD method. Yeah. Over the decade-long projection, shifting to this biogenic method saves 800,000 megawatt hours of electrical energy.
Wait, hold on. This is the part where I have to play the skeptic because 80% less energy and zero toxic chemicals sounds like a lab bench fantasy.
I get that it sounds too good to be true.
Right, like if we actually need 10,000 tons of this stuff to supply a global tech industry, can a process relying on coffee farmers pruning their trees really scale up to meet that?
It's a valid question.
We are talking about replacing a deeply entrenched, multi-billion-dollar global mining and chemical infrastructure. Is this just a boutique, small bash solution?
The scaling question is usually where alternative materials fail. You're right. But the analysis explicitly models this at an industrial scale.
Okay.
The reason it can scale is directly tied to its comparative simplicity. If you want to expand traditional graphene production, you have to permit and build a massive, highly regulated chemical plant.
Yeah, one capable of handling hundreds of thousands of tons of dangerous acids.
Exactly. Or you have to build facilities that can sustain 1,000-degree reactors running 24/7. That requires massive capital and centralized infrastructure.
Right, you can't just build a sulfuric acid processing plant in a random neighborhood. It takes years and billions of dollars.
Exactly. But with the biogenic method, you don't need that heavy infrastructure. You need decentralized facilities located directly in agricultural hubs that are capable of performing controlled pyrolysis.
Oh, so you bring the facility to the farm.
Right. The bottleneck isn't the technology or the availability of the biomass. The bottleneck is simply shifting the logistics of the supply chain to intercept agricultural waste before it is destroyed.
And that shift in the supply chain forces us to look at the people involved. We've spent this time talking about the toll on the planet,
Right.
the carbon, the acid, the millions of liters of water, the energy
The
grid.
environmental side, yeah.
But there is a very real flesh and blood toll happening right now. When you run an industry on mining dust and boiling acid, there are human beings standing next to those machines.
That is often the most sanitized part of the clean tech narrative. We have to look at the exhaustive mining of natural graphite.
Right, where does it come from?
The traditional supply chain starts in massive open pit mines, primarily in the global south, where the workforce is constantly exposed to respirable dust.
And what happens when you breathe in pure aerosolized carbon dust shift after shift?
It coats the lungs and leads to severe chronic respiratory conditions, specifically a disease called graphitosis, which is a type of pneumoconiosis.
Oh, wow.
It's very similar to the black lung disease that coal miners suffer from. And the danger doesn't stop at the mine.
Because it still has to go to the chemical plant.
Right. Once that graphite is shipped to the chemical processors, we are back to those 350,000 tons of acid.
God.
The workers handling those precursors face a daily high-risk exposure to severe chemical burns, toxic inhalation, and long-term neurological impacts from the heavy solvents.
The source material contains a statistic on this that genuinely stopped me in my tracks.
A hospitalization rate.
Yeah, based on the traditional production models, for that 10,000-ton projection, they estimate a 4% to 6% hospitalization rate for the workforce exposed to this heavy refining.
It's devastating.
We are talking about anywhere from 1,200 to 1,800 human beings who will require medium-term hospital care just to keep this supply chain moving.
Yeah.
That isn't an accident rate. That is a guaranteed casualty rate built right into the business model.
It is a profound occupational health crisis that is entirely swept under the rug. But this is where the socioeconomic implications of the biogenic model become just as revolutionary as the material science.
How so?
By switching the raw material from mined graphite to coffee branches,
Yeah.
you entirely bypass that health crisis.
No dust, no acid.
Exactly. You are physically moving the economic center of production away from highly toxic, dangerous industrial zones and decentralizing it into agricultural regions.
You are substituting chemical danger for safe, technified agricultural employment. Which brings us to the coffee farmers themselves. Because if we are moving the supply chain to their farms, we need to understand their current reality. And frankly, the traditional economic model for coffee farming is incredibly precarious, right?
It is a deeply vulnerable livelihood. Right now, coffee farmers are entirely at the mercy of highly volatile international grain prices.
One bad year and they're ruined.
Exactly. Their survival depends exclusively on the yield and the market price of the coffee bean. But to ensure those trees actually produce good beans, the farmers have to engage in what is called phytosanitary pruning every single year.
So they have to cut away the old branches.
Right, they have to cut away the old woody branches to promote new growth.
So they are generating millions of tons of this specific wood globally every year just to keep their farms running.
Yeah.
What are they currently doing with it?
It is treated strictly as a logistical nightmare, pure agricultural waste. Usually they just leave it in the fields to rot.
Which can't be good for the crops.
No, it acts as a breeding ground for pests and fungal diseases that can threaten the next harvest. Or, more commonly, they gather it up and burn it in open-air fires.
Just burn it all.
Yeah, which immediately releases all that stored carbon straight back into the atmosphere as greenhouse gases. They spend labor hours dealing with a byproduct that offers them zero financial return.
Enter Nova Amazonia. They step into this dynamic and say, we will buy that waste.
Exactly.
And according to the analysis, this simple transaction creates a solidarity economy. They are intercepting this residual wood, this annoyance that the farmers use to spend money to cut down and set on fire, and they're converting it into a highly valuable nanotech raw material.
Right.
And the impact on the farmers' wallets isn't just a marginal bump, is it?
No, it is transformative. The projection indicates that by integrating into this new supply chain and selling their pruned, wood-struggling farming families and local cooperatives can see their annual incomes boosted by up to 50%.
50%. So what does this all mean for the farmers? It is a complete inversion of value. You suddenly realize that the scrap wood you've been burning your whole life is the missing link for the next generation of global technology.
It injects vital capital directly into the hands of small producers in the global south.
But looking at market dynamics, if I'm a farmer and I suddenly see my income jump 50% just from selling branches,
Yeah.
won't that create a perverse incentive?
How do you mean?
Like, what stops a farmer from saying, forget the beans, the money's in the wood, and just clear-cutting their entire coffee farm to sell to the graphene industry?
Yeah, it's a natural economic question, but the genius of this specific model is that it is structurally dependent on the continued health of the coffee industry, not its destruction.
Oh, okay.
The biogenic process requires the specific type of wood that comes from annual pruning, the very process that ensures a healthy bean-producing tree.
I see.
If a farmer chops down their entire orchard, they might get a one-time payout for the bulk wood, but they destroy their long-term compounding asset.
Right, because the wood only regrows if the tree is alive and well.
Exactly. The economic incentive is perfectly aligned with sustainable agriculture. The farmer is heavily incentivized to keep the farm healthy, maximize their bean harvest for the traditional food market, and then sell the pruning waste for the nanotech market.
It creates a robust dual income stream.
Right. It stabilizes these rural cooperatives without forcing them to abandon or change their fundamental agricultural heritage.
It's a profound systemic shift. I mean, we are taking the immense wealth that has traditionally been concentrated in the hands of massive mining conglomerates and chemical processing monopolies, right?
Yes.
And we are distributing it directly to rural farming families in the global south, all while cleaning up the environmental footprint of our most advanced technologies.
It proves that true technological advancement is not merely about discovering a novel material. It is about redesigning the entire ecosystem of how that material is created and who benefits from its creation.
Absolutely.
For over a century, industrialization has conditioned us to believe in a false binary. We have been taught that for technology to advance, something else must inevitably be sacrificed.
Whether that is the purity of our water, the safety of our workers, or the balance of our climate.
Exactly.
Martin Gutierrez Guerrero and the 3D Biogenic Graphene project prove that this is a false choice. We don't have to choose between a cutting-edge technological future and human health.
We really don't.
We can have the miracle material, and we can have it without ripping open the earth or boiling our water in toxic acid. We just have to be willing to look at the problem from a completely different angle.
Right.
Instead of trying to force nature to bend to our will using sledgehammers and harsh chemistry, we can start working in tandem with the intricate, highly efficient structures that nature has already spent millions of years perfecting.
It truly is a paradigm shift. And analyzing this projection leaves me with one lingering thought to consider. If one of the most advanced, highly sought-after supermaterials of the 21st century can be efficiently harvested from the discarded, unwanted branches of a common coffee plant,
Yeah.
you know what other revolutionary technologies are currently just sitting in our compost bins.
That is a great point.
What other massive industrial problems could be solved if we simply stopped looking at agricultural waste as garbage and started recognizing it as the ultimate high-tech raw material waiting to be decoded?
That is the perfect question to leave you with today. The next time you see a pile of pruned branches, a field of husks, or any form of agricultural waste, you might just be looking at the foundation of the next global technological revolution. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, keep questioning the hidden systems around you, and we will catch you next time.